join us for another fabulous party at USNH. The Goods and Services Auction is on Friday, June 2nd. Enjoy entertainment, dinner, and dessert along with silent and live auctions. More than 60 experiences, services, and items. Admission is by suggested donation, and everyone is welcome. But please help us plan for food by getting tickets ahead of time. We'll be in the social hall after the service. Come peruse the list of items and experiences available. There is something for everyone. This is a family-friendly event, and childcare is available.
Hard act to follow. Often our services begin with what we call a love talk, living our values every day. And this morning I'm going to invite Kathy Jackson up to talk about naughty conversations.
I'm speaking beyond naughty conversations. I'm speaking this morning for Becky Sandman, who facilitated the course, Naughty Conversations for Dismantling White Supremacy, as well as for myself, as I facilitated the course, Mistakes and Miracles, Congregations on the Road to Multiculturalism. These two courses were sponsored by the Adult Religious Education Committee. They highlight one way we are living our values of becoming an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural, beloved community. Becky and I believe that anti-racism work is not only the work of a task force or working group, but rather it is the work of the entire congregation. Our experience over the past few months is that people who were introduced to this topic for the first time were telling us that we need to involve more congregational members in the work of building this beloved community. The Naughty Conversations course was an introduction to such topics as cultural appropriation, following the leadership of people of color and other marginalized groups, and finally, allies, accomplices, and collective liberation. It was a chance for us to have open and honest conversations, even at times when this was difficult. The Mistakes and Miracles course provided case studies of 5 UU congregations and how they navigated the process of becoming more open to diversity in their congregations. Those chosen were a sampling from around the country. We came away with a better understanding of the pitfalls and the promises of being on this difficult and transformative journey. The process began with individuals being open to change, and then the congregation as a whole. One thing that was a commonality between all 5 congregations was that they either changed their bylaws or their covenants to explicitly state their intention to be anti-racist and anti-oppressive and open to all people. This is our UU religious imperative. This morning, we will be exploring the topic of covenant and the process of covenanting with each other, hoping that USNH can be clear about our intention to build the beloved community.
Good morning. I'm Jim Peters. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a member of the worship committee, and it's my pleasure to welcome one and all to this in-person and live stream service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. Wherever you are in your life's journey, we are glad that you found your way here this morning. Know that in this sanctuary, all are welcome, with our doubts and our certainties, our questions and our answers, our brokenness and our wholeness. A special welcome to those who are newcomers to this community. Please feel invited to visit the welcome table and to join in fellowship in our social hall following the service. This morning's worship will explore the value of covenant as central to the flourishing of our beloved community. Along with myself, Bobby Pace, Kathy Jackson, Kathleen Haskins, and Karen Swanson will be sharing words and readings with us this morning. Jesse Greist, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and Bill Braun, Associate Director of Music, will be sharing their talents as well. And of course, we thank Rob Cam and his tech team for keeping the lights on in cyberspace. It does take a village. A couple of other announcements. At a point later in the service, we'll invite you all to write a few words down. We provided paper and pencils as you enter the sanctuary this morning. If you happen to miss that and would like paper and pencil now, just raise your hand if there's anyone who didn't get a paper and pencil. We can make that happen. If you just keep your hands up, Bobby will find you. And I'll just say a few other announcements. Marion Weissel is offering a workshop Saturday morning, May 27th, called Calming Your Inner Critic. If it's time for you to learn more about your inner critic, to calm its voice, and to make room for a more compassionate inner voice, be in touch with Marion by email or phone to learn more about Soul Collage's intuitive approach that anyone can do. Her contact information can be found in the newsletter, and there are posters on the bulletin boards in the lobby, social hall, and outside Jesse's office. Speaking of Jesse, he has an announcement that this Friday, May 19th, the social cinema program will be showing The AI Dilemma right here at USNH, 6 o'clock potluck dinner, 7 o'clock film and discussion. And of course, today is Mother's Day. So let us take a moment to hold in our thoughts and our hearts the mothers with whom we shared our first moments of life, the mothers we chose over our lifetime and those who chose us, the mothers still here, the mothers who have passed away, and those who are somewhere in between. To those mothers to whom we feel tightly bonded and to those from whom we may feel estranged, all of it, the easy and the hard, the light and the heavy, the humorous and the serious, all that we think of when we each think of who our mothers are and what motherhood is. Let us honor those thoughts and those souls. Happy Mother's Day, one and all. And now I'd like to ask Bobby Pace up to make a quick announcement.
I am the co-chair of the search committee, and I have the really exciting news to let you know that we have found a wonderful minister for our congregation. All the paperwork is going to be done probably next week and everything signed off on, but we have a yes from this individual, and the search committee in total is thrilled with this person.
That's wonderful. And now, friends, with this gentle reminder to please set your electronic devices convincingly into worship mode, our service continues as we light the chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. And this morning's chalice lighting is called Drawn Together by Jennifer Grayson. We come together every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods or no gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world.
Covenanting is at the heart of the practice of Unitarian Universalism. Our religious ancestors created our tradition as a faith community bound not by allegiance to a particular creed, that is, specific beliefs, but rather by faithfulness to a covenant, that is, a set of mutual promises to each other and to something greater than ourselves. Over time, the practice of covenant in many congregations has been reduced to behavioral covenants and used as a way to monitor the behavior between individuals. This leaves out so many important aspects of covenant: our commitment to spirit, justice, love, earth, our commitments to ancestors and our generations to come, our commitments to other UU congregations who are part of our association. We are called to remember that covenant is a practice, not a product. There are ways of practicing covenant that are multidimensional and liberating, and which help us learn skills needed to contribute to liberation in the world. Come with open minds and loving hearts, and let us worship together this morning.
So following up on that call to worship, I wanted to talk to you this morning talk you through a little bit of just how interesting and how challenging the work of covenant can be sometimes. And first, a quick disclaimer. The story I'm going to share this morning is actually, I obtained consent from everyone that was involved to share this story. So some years ago, I was involved in a youth conference at Ferry Beach Conference Center in Saco, Maine. And when working with the youth, we started out our conferences, as Unitarian Universalists do, by creating a covenant together. The first item on that covenant, which was put on a big poster in our common meeting space, read as follows: respect confidentiality, seek consent before sharing outside this group what another has said. As we moved through the day, we of course had other items in the covenant, but that was the first item right there. On the second day of the conference, we began by reading the covenant together. On the third day of the conference, we began by reading the covenant together. On the fourth day, this was a Tuesday of the conference, some of the youth started out and said, "Can we just skip that? We all know the covenant by this point." And the group leader said, "I have an idea." And the group leader went over and covered up the covenant and gave everybody an index card and said, "I invite you now to list the things that are on our covenant." And each of the youth wrote down, and the fun thing was they were all absolutely right. Sort of. Again, the real covenant said, respect confidentiality. Seek consent before sharing outside the group what another has said. The group leader had everybody go around and share what they had written on their index cards. And I actually took pictures of these after these, so I have the exact wording that the youth all shared. So here's how that first piece on the covenant filtered through everybody's own brain's game of telephone. The first youth said, "Don't share anything another person has said outside the group." The second person, "When sharing what someone else has said outside the group, don't include their name." Third youth, "Don't share any thought or story that isn't your own." Fourth youth, "The first rule of Covenant Club is don't talk about Covenant Club." And finally, respect confidentiality. You can only talk about what someone has said with other people in the original group. Now take a moment. Think about how each of the youth internalized that piece of covenant, and think about what it meant to each one of them. Can you imagine a situation in which this covenant might become complicated in practice, and how each person's interpretation of what was written in the covenant might complicate the most important aspect of Unitarian Universalism, being the way in which we interact with each other in a space of safety in our individual spiritual journeys? Let's take that with us into our work as Unitarian Universalists, and remember that covenant is always developing, is always changing, and is a living thing, and most of all, should probably be read at the beginning of each session. Bearing that in mind, let us rise in body or spirit and sing hymn number 311 as our children and youth make their way up to Children's Chapel at the end of the hallway, and 7th and 8th graders who would like some extra work on their covenant on your credos, may come to the library. Let us sing Let It Be a Dance. Bill's going to introduce us, and we'll sing the children out.
First two verses.
We're going to sing the first two verses. Thank you for that. First two verses.
Let the music sing the word.
child is born, a star. Round and round we go, as it passes Now, if we could read together our covenant in its entirety. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open to new ideas, experiences, and change, to create space for all opinions, and to warmly welcome newcomers into our community. Value differences by welcoming diversity in all its forms, celebrating the unique qualities and gifts of every individual, and by honoring the diversity of our spiritual paths. Listen deeply and honor others with our full attention, seeking to understand and assuming good intentions. Use kind language, speaking with care and consideration, being gentle with one another, and remembering there is power in silence and reflection. Speak our truths by sharing personal stories that build trust and community, by speaking our truths with courage and encouraging others to do the same, especially in difficult times. Work with conflict, addressing differences with honesty and compassion, requesting support when needed, making and receiving authentic apologies, and being willing to forgive. Seek humor and joy, remembering that these qualities can enrich all that we do, and by holding things lightly when we are able.
Friends, in this caring community, we remind ourselves each week that joy and woe are woven fine. Some of us bear burdens made lighter as others help us to carry them. Some of us hold joys that shine more brightly as others reflect our delight. All of us are made more whole by knowing each other's stories in full. I have this to share from Sue Lindsley, who recently returned from her Alaska cruise with photographs, memories, and the coronavirus. She is asymptomatic and staying home, and we wish her a speedy and full recovery. In a time of quiet, we hold also the unspoken joys and challenges carried this day within this community. Each week, we call upon one another to support the vital work in which our community is engaged. Ushers will be available to receive donations at the back of the sanctuary after the service, and you can use the QR code printed on your order of service to take you to the donation page on our website, usnh.org. However you choose to give, and in whatever amount, please know your generosity is sincerely appreciated. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Good morning. My name is Karen Swanson, and my pronouns are she and her and they. And I'm Kathy Haskins, and my pronouns are she and her. A Covenant Invites Relationship by Lisa Ward. A covenant is not a definition of a relationship. It is the framework for our relating. A covenant leaves room for change, chance, and change. It is humble toward evolution. It claims, I will abide with you in this common endeavor to be present as best I can in our becoming. This calls for a level of trust, courage, and sacrifice that needs to be nurtured, renewed, and affirmed on a regular basis. A creed creates a static truth, something that does not incorporate new insights and realities. A covenant is a dance of co-creation, keeping in step with one another in a flow of our lives.
A creed seeks uniformity and a unison voice.
A covenant seeks harmony and a shared voice. Sometimes we may arrive at unison, but it is not required.
A creed gives authority to the statement.
Okay. A covenant gives authority to shared intention.
A creed creates an us and a them.
A covenant invites relationship.
A creed is a prescription that must be relied on.
A covenant relies on the treasures of shared truth.
The overall trust within this covenant is in the truth, capital T, something which no one person can fully see, yet something which each and every person can come to know in glimpses, in another's story, in epiphanies. Truth is ever changing in our seeking to understand because of our limited perspectives. We grow into a deeper sense of the meaning of all things when we take our journey seriously with a full heart and mind.
The courage within the covenant is in the acceptance and celebration of life, with all of its challenges, pains, ironies, and joys. And the sacrifice within the covenant is in the letting go of dogma, of assumptions of a control, and giving over to a greater wisdom which comes to us in bits and pieces.
The task of this covenant is to take responsibility for the freedom we espouse. We know that we are interconnected and that what we do creates ripples of hope or despair, of affirmation or negation. What we do with and for one another is powerful and beyond our imagining. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bobby Pace. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a long-term member of this congregation, and I grew up in this community, and my parents were founding members. A number of years ago, I was chair of the Right Relations team that created the USNH covenant that we read this morning. It was originally called the Right Relations Covenant, and my experience creating that covenant with others was transformative in many ways, on many levels. I believed that that covenant was comprehensive and included wonderful aspirations. Unfortunately, back then, some congregants felt the covenant and the Committee on Right Relations were like the Right Relations police. What was it about covenant that caused such discomfort? It's only recently that I have learned that covenant holds a space between law and free will. This concept is not easy at first to understand, and I struggled to wrap my mind around that concept. I had not grasped the depth and the collective power that covenants can have. It's not really a set of behavioral boundaries. If you see it as such, it can shut you down. Don't make waves or express what you feel, and you can avoid any conflict. Everybody just be nice. But we are living in a stressful and challenging world. We need a community that believes that we can each make mistakes again and again and still be loved and supported while we're learning to grow into our best selves. A covenant can help us find a path back to each other, even as we face conflict and change. We can hold together because we offer a promise to belong to each other and care for each other, because we're all special, unique, and evolving. This, I believe, is loving more generously, creating and sharing a gracious space for each other to thrive in. I'm still learning how to be in what's called beloved community, but this covenantal faith concept looks like it could be a path to get us there. Of course, there will be bumps and turns in the road, but just think a minute what a community like that would feel like in these unpredictable, changing times we live in. May it be so.
My reflection this morning is entitled Covenant in Action. Friends, when I think of what covenant means, the first thing that comes to mind are the specific words we in this community have chosen to include in our covenantal statement, the words we read together earlier in the service, and what that document says about the ideals we've prioritized, the goals and aspirations we've laid out for ourselves. I think of that document and what it says about us as a community. But this morning, in the few minutes that I have, I would like to reflect not so much on covenant as a noun, as this vital piece of written work that the community has generated. Instead, I'd like to focus on covenant as a verb, as active, as ongoing work illuminated by, but never fully realized in the words we use to communicate its meaning. Remembering that covenant is also a verb is why when we have shared the covenant this church year, we have often included these introductory comments. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. I think there's enormous truth in that. Remembering that covenant is a verb as well as a noun emphasizes that as an organic, evolving community, our connections to each other, our commitments to each other, and also our conflicts with each other is work that requires our vigilance, forbearance, and lots of patience. I believe the work of creating and sustaining and growing in a beloved community requires all those virtues and more, and I think of that work as covenant in action. For me, central to this idea of covenant in action is embracing that we are and ever will be a collective work in progress. Because I believe our work is a project that can't be completed. If we're committed to a covenantal faith, it's lifelong work, both for our community and for each of us as individuals. This isn't work for one committee or the board or the management team or any small group. Our covenantal relations have to be part of all of our experience as human beings and Unitarian Universalists. As part of my preparation for this morning's reflection, I did some exploring of the UUA website to see what's posted there with regard to covenantal relationships. And you don't have to look very long to recognize that not everyone feels fully included within our larger faith community. Inclusion is complicated and multifaceted, and I'm not sure that someone who looks like me is the one to preach on how to make our congregation more welcoming to people who don't look like me. But this much I do believe. Covenant in action has to include rigorous and honest assessments of our biases and our blind spots and our multiple privileges. Covenant in action has to include a commitment to hearing from a wide range of viewpoints, experiences, and philosophies, including those that make us deeply uncomfortable. My informal definition of privilege is possessing the power rarely to feel existentially uncomfortable. I'm convinced that actively engaging in the ongoing work of living as a covenantal community can't happen if we're never uncomfortable when we're doing that work. It's very challenging to locate my blind spots entirely on my own. Our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions, especially when we are acting in a way that honors our deepest values of inclusion and justice seeking. Connected to this idea that our covenant work has to involve some challenging conversations and some honest assessments of ourselves, I would like to flag that the phrase assuming good intentions are words common to many UU congregational covenants, including our own, and is pointed to as problematic for some who consider themselves on the margins of our faith institution. I can appreciate that during times of interpersonal conflict, the call to assuming good intentions might help those involved to give the benefit of the doubt, or otherwise to work through the conflict to some more or less positive resolution. But that's not the only way assuming good intentions can work in our community. It can also be used as a justification for not examining those parts of ourselves, individually and collectively, that give off an unwelcoming vibe or perpetuate inequalities. For myself, I would cheer for a process of looking critically at our intentions rather than making prior assumptions about them. Our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions, not our intentions. The last thing I'd like to say is I feel I have witnessed covenant as a verb, covenant in action, countless times this year, especially since last November when Reverend Linda Susan began her leave of absence. In the intervening months as part of the worship committee, I have been approached by so many USNH members asking how they might help keep worship going this church year. There's been a tremendous amount of collective work of covenant in action as we have together responded to the challenge, not just with regard to worship, but across the many activities in which we've engaged. And so I know I'm not the only person in this room who connects the ideas of covenant and action, and that makes me feel very hopeful going forward. And friends, the leadership team for this service thought it would be worthwhile to hold a little space now in a third reflection that we offer to the congregation. If anyone came in late and didn't get a piece of paper or a pencil, if you just raise your hand, we'll make sure you get one. And this was the idea. Our third reflection is in your capable hands. The morning, just said, if you write something, so what we're asking you to do is I'm going to ring the bell and hold a few minutes quiet. During that time, what we'd like to ask you to do is just take a moment, reflect on the word covenant, and just write down any words or phrases that come to mind. It doesn't have to be an essay, just whatever first rises up. And our thought was that if you felt so moved to share what you've written, take that piece of paper, put it in the collection plate, or leave it in the front where you got the orders of service in the morning when you walked in, or hand them to me. And next week, I will publish what has been written in our weekly newsletter. Names are not required. This is really just an opportunity for some voluntary reflection. And of course, participation is entirely up to you. So now I'll ring the bell and invite you into reflection. In a few more minutes, I'll ring it again to close the piece, and the service will then continue with our closing hymn. I invite you to take a moment and discover what arises within you.
I invite you to rise in body, in spirit, in all the ways that we do, and join me in singing hymn number 1012 in the Teal hymnal, When I Am Frightened.
Please join with me in the words we use to extinguish the chalice, which you'll find in your order of service or in the chat on the live stream. Together, let us say, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Today, can we return to the shelter of each other, to arms that hold us in the midst of the storm, to voices that help us hear our own, to hearts that accept us as who we are? May we be for each other, a source of safety and sending. May we offer each other both comfort and challenge. May this place of peace lead us to share peace with others. Let us begin. Blessed be.